Hey there, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. And I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. The EduData podcast is your no-fluff guide to the data driving higher education. Forget about data silos and disconnected stacks. Timothy Davis and Jamie Boggs, two of Element 451's data analysis experts, bring you straight into the heart of the numbers that matter. With sharp commentary and rigorous research, our hosts break down complex data points and actionable insights you can use. Whether you're an administrator, educator, or just a higher ed enthusiast, EduData is your key to unlocking the data behind academia. New episodes drop every Friday morning, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search the EduData podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where each week we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Higher Ed Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome, everybody, for another wonderful episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast. We're here with a conversation that originated with a conversation at South by Southwest EDU. So if you've been following the feed for a bit, you've seen all the live episodes that we recorded there. But obviously, there's only so many hours in the day and coordinating everything. So I know a couple of folks that I kind of grabbed. It's like, well, it'd be great to still do something virtually in the near future after the event. So this is born out of that, and I'm very excited for the conversation. And we'll start as we always do. Aneesh, if you want to introduce yourself and your professional background really briefly, and then we'll talk more about the work that your organization is doing.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you filling in your South by Southwest EDU hours and thereafter as well. So I'm Aneesh Sohoni. I'm the CEO of an organization called 1 Million Degrees. We're a nonprofit that works with community colleges and their students to accelerate students on a path to upward economic mobility.
I know we had talked briefly about what you all do when we're on site, and that sort of just further piqued my interest or sort of willingness to have this conversation kind of help highlight and uplift it, because I think it's just sometimes where it's like, there's a lot of different organizations out there doing a lot of different work, but I think I just really appreciated your sort of your commitment and your organization's commitment to your work and everything. But I guess just like as part of sort of a brief kind of anecdote, I guess, of your origin story, like what really pulled you or kind of drew you to this work, or what kind of like really resonated with you about it?
Yeah, I think there were two things. On a personal note, my mom's a community college graduate. And so, my parents came to the United States with one-way plane tickets, with college letters, acceptance letters from my dad, and my mom didn't immediately go to college, but eventually on her way to our local community college. And so having grown up and actually seen my mom go to college and actually, gone to the campus where she went to college when I was in elementary school, I just really saw the power and the potential of what community colleges can be to a number of learners, either straight from high school or even adults who have some college or maybe even no college, but are looking to invest in themselves. And I was really inspired by my mom's journey. And I would say the investment she made really fundamentally changed our family's life. And so it created generational opportunity. My sister and I were lucky enough to have so much opportunity growing up as well. And so really wanted to think about how we could create that systemically for community college students. And then on a professional note, I'm sort of the accidental nonprofit leader. I started as a high school English teacher, even though I thought I'd be going to law school. I then ventured into some education policy work because it seemed interesting and tied back to my political science degree, but then quickly realized, as much as I think the policy lever is important, my heart and my passion is probably more at the program and practice level, and really thinking through how we can help systems institutionalize and scale things that work. And so I've been doing nonprofit work across the country. And in Chicago in particular, I think there's been such a great focus on advancing outcomes for students through 12th grade. But when you looked at the data, it seemed like we were spiking the football at the 20-yard line before we got to the end zone. And I thought there was such an opportunity to continue on the journey with students in Chicago and across the country to make sure that they could continue to be successful, not just into and through college, but really thinking about mapping backward to what they wanted their lives to be and the role of work within that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's been interesting for me, like over these past several years, like you have seen, I guess the nature of the modern community college change, where like it at times does feel kind of like what you're saying, like it's almost like 13th, 14th grade. Like it's kind of like becoming like feeling like standard. And you're seeing a lot of states invest in these sort of, where it's like, free to the student, really investing in like free community college and kind of building much more kind of streamlined, kind of efficient, easy, accessible ways for students to kind of get that further education, which can get them, further than just a high school diploma or set them up in a really sort of powerful position to then pursue a 4-year degree or whatever else they might want to pursue. But, like the modern community college, I think, it just has a lot of value of its flexibility, responsive and things. So I think, that sounds like a core part of your strategy is kind of just really refreshing, because I think it's, been this sort of like neglected corner of higher ed where it's like 4-year degree or nothing. And like, this sort of thing. And it's just like a lot of people, engage with community colleges and get credentials from them. Or that is like the start of their pathway towards, any number of further credentials from there. So I guess if you just want to sort of, elaborate, I guess, more on the work, 'cause I know you said it sort of like has its epicenter in the greater Chicago area, but obviously starting to kind of, put out roots and kind of feelers out across the country and everything, but just like more about sort of the work of 1 Million Degrees, sort of the approach, I guess, that you all take, just to give that a little bit more depth.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with why community colleges, right, which is where I think you picked up here. As you noted, they're such important vehicles for accessible higher education for so many of our students. I mean, over 50% of first-time college-going students will attend a community college at some point in their journey. And so the challenge is that community colleges haven't always delivered on the promise, right, of what they could be. And our fundamental learning and belief is that if you are able to invest in holistic supports for students that allow them to meet what the opportunity is, then community colleges have the potential to really deliver for their students. To be clear, I don't think this is always the college's fault, right? There are real resource constraints and systems constraints facing colleges, their presidents, and their system leaders. And so I think what we've been really about is trying to prove out, if you really fully invest in what it takes for a student, what can be possible, and why do we think it makes sound sense both for the student, but also financially as well. So to your question about 1 Million Degrees, we have this holistic student support model. It has a lot of different components to it that you might see in many other models. The thing I'll share before I dive into the components is I think it's the comprehensive nature of our model that really makes it work. It's that we have everything available for a student, even if they don't need it in that moment, it's all there when they need it. And the personalized nature of our model, where a student really gets to walk through and navigate their own experiences, that makes this model work. So, we provide academic and life support to our students. We have a staff member called a program coordinator that works with up to 65 students at a time and can really personalize the support they provide to the student, whatever that student might need, help them make choices about what pathway of study they're pursuing related to their goals and dreams. We have professional development as well. So our students have access to curriculum that supports them in sort of thinking about core competencies to be successful both in education and also preparing for what life after education might have to offer in career as well. And then we also offer financial stipends. Our students are eligible for up to $1,000 per year if they meet program expectations, which serves both as a hook for our students to want to participate in our program because $1,000 is a lot of money, and serves as a retention mechanism because many of our students face either unmet or unexpected financial emergencies that are far below $1,000, and yet this is sort of unrestricted capital they can use to kind of take care of that and continue on in their journey as well. So that's the model. And the last piece I'll just share on the impact base here, which is what I think is really proving why we think public systems should be able to invest in what we do. We did a randomized control trial that I think is added to a rich evidence base that's been building across the country on programs like ours that found that students who applied to our program before enrolling in community colleges were 70% more likely to enroll, 94% more likely to persist through their first year, and 73% more likely to graduate with a degree within 3 years of starting. So I think really powerful student outcomes, and equally as important, we're generating near-term revenue for the colleges as well. More students enrolling, more students persisting means more credit hours taken and completed, which creates access to tuition revenue for the colleges. What we found in our model is many colleges actually can earn and generate revenue off of our program. And so it's sort of a no-brainer to reinvest back in supporting students in this way.
It's really amazing. And I think it is that idea of like, I'd mentioned that, you've seen just the advent of all these kind of free community college movements, and, the sticker price is one big part of the equation here. But then it's like, the tragedy really is that like these under-resourced community colleges may not really be, like you said, making good kind of on the promise. So it's like, how can you try to fill those gaps, like making a very comprehensive sort of support network to help them persist, but also just like, because I think that's really acknowledging all these kind of nuances, because it's like you could have all the sort of like emergency funds and like, sort of like safety nets and things, but then it's like, cool, but like I don't really feel like I like grew or learned enough or whatever, like the life skills and like these different kind of things. It's like I think there's always sort of a hunger for that, and then just sort of letting the institution kind of focus in on and try to like really invest in sort of the academic experience. So it's like, you're obviously hiring and training effective faculty who are teaching with great tools and keeping your curriculum up to date. So it's like trying to kind of like shift the pieces around, and like you all are sort of helping to invest with sort of like, best practices around student support and the other sort of complementary, maybe like outside of the classroom things like the life skills. And then, hopefully the community college, like you said, it's like they're bringing in more students and maybe able to kind of deploy more resources towards like the academic side, which I think that's when you have these sort of kind of partnerships, it's like, that's always the core of what the institution sort of owns and manages and sort of nurtures is like, the faculty and the academic experience. And then, you can get a lot of great partners to come in to sort of to kind of complement that. But
yeah, I mean, the big thing we hear from our students, right, just to kind of hit on a key point you're making here, is we help connect our students back to their hopes and dreams. Right, there's so much potential and so much opportunity, but to directly connect it back with the skills and the capabilities needed to think about what happens in life after college is a key part of what we do. And the way in which we do that is by building community and trusting relationships. Colleges have a lot that they offer. Oftentimes, those offerings can go underutilized because there's not a trusted person who's stewarding a student's experience and helping them access what might already be available, right? So if it's wellness centers that will help a student kind of persevere and thrive, if it's an advisor who can help them map out their course offering, the demands on community colleges to serve multiple constituents is quite large. What we can do is be that trusted relationship and that trusted partner to a student to help them understand what's available and what might make the most sense for them.
Trying to make the right choices. That's a big part of the equation, I guess. Like, so it's like, okay, cool. Like the price all works out, but I feel as though I'm empowered to make, an informed decision about the right institution, the right program, the right modality, like all those sort of things. And then as I'm going through the journey, I've got all the supports I need. And then I feel well prepared, on the back end and everything. So it's like, yeah, complete kind of suites of all, I feel like the really important necessary things. It's great to kind of hear all that and just sort of the power and the impact and the response that you're all getting. But I'm curious, I guess, just how have you seen or understand sort of the work of the organization like evolving over the past couple of years? Because I feel like it's been very momentous, sort of turbulent times for higher ed, since 2020 and, kind of leading into it, I guess. But yeah, just any anecdotes or reflections on like how the work has changed or evolved over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak about 1 million degrees first, and I'll speak sort of about the broader sector as well. So I started in this role 2.5 years ago, and one of the big reasons I was attracted to come here was the evidence base we've built up. And I think the question that was in front of 1 million degrees was, how do you grow to serve more students? We were sort of a boutique program, serving about 900 students per year here in Chicago. And there was so much opportunity and potential to serve more. So we've built a new partnership with City Colleges of Chicago in those 2 years, where moving forward, students who are sort of pursuing that degree or long-term credential pathway are automatically enrolled in our program rather than having to apply for it. So as you can imagine, that gives us access to many more students. Now, students can opt out, right? We don't want to force a student to do it, but it's going to allow us to grow from under 1,000 students to serving over 4,000 students by 2026. And we think there's even more potential beyond that here in Chicago as well to get to 6,000 to 9,000 students over time. And so we're really excited to sort of say we're going to reach as many students as possible where we've learned we can be successful with that population of students. And equally as important, as I was alluding to earlier, we play an important role as a nonprofit in sort of proving out what's possible and delivering impact. And at the end of the day, we really want to see what we've learned be integrated and institutionalized inside of public systems. And so we are working with our partners at City Colleges in a way where we're not just on the journey with them on the side, but we're actually working hand in hand in partnership with them to integrate our team and their teams, either through shared goals, which I think has been really motivating for advisors and our program coordinators, or through shared practices. For example, our team now has access to the City College's student information system to make better and more informed decisions on how we can support students as well. So that's sort of one trajectory we're on, which is let's just go all in and all out in Chicago. The other place we're looking is, we've been getting a lot of inbound requests for, hey, help us learn about your model and how it can be applied in our context. And we've made a choice to develop a model where we can help to build the capacity of other communities, whether they be the colleges themselves or their community partners, to take what we've learned and implement it in their context. So a technical assistance and capacity building model. And we've approached it this way because we think there are a lot of assets that exist in other communities already. But perhaps a couple of the missing ingredients has been the ability to invest in holistic student supports, to understand how that journey can help students and also help your bottom line financially in a way that can allow you to sustain this over time. So we're working on a few partnerships right now beyond Chicago that will allow us to really test out, can these practices spread in a way that are sustainable and enduring in those other communities and contexts as well.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're focusing both on sort of like, growing and also like kind of the transferability of the ideas and the concepts. Because I think like, education is great in that way, very open to sort of collaborating, show and tell, and, sharing and everything. But like that you're kind of, or the impression kind of from what I'm hearing is like kind of baking in, in certain ways, like how can we do the work, but then also like help inspire others or equip them with the tools and the strategies and all that to do this. Cause I think that's sometimes where it's like, well, we're just doing what we're doing. And I mean, maybe we'll like tell other people, and if they like it, they can go do it. Like, it's not like people aren't like operating in a way that's very like thoughtful around that, and they don't have to be. But I think, knowing, I guess, sort of but I feel like it's sort of the imperative of a moment of like, we've got to keep engaging as many people in higher education and having that be, accessible and effective, and just like all these things that we're talking about. It's like, it takes a lot. So if we're getting organizations and partners really, really committing to this and committing to sort of the whole field and trying to help as many, institutions as possible, I think it's really time well spent and just important to kind of meet the demands of the moment. So in that vein, how do you see this work that you're doing is, specifically in the community college space? Like, why is it so important now? I guess I'd just be curious to kind of hear it in your own words, because I feel like, a lot of folks would probably just, feel as though that's the case, but just sort of from your perspective in your own words, like, why is this sort of segment of the higher ed ecosystem like such a sort of like crucial component of what you're doing, like for this moment?
You've been alluding to this in your comments, right? We do have a real affordability challenge when we think about higher education writ large. And that is something that many of my colleagues and peers are tackling head on, and it needs to be addressed because far too many of our pathways for students to go straight into four-year colleges just frankly are unaffordable, even if it's the right pathway for that student. At the same time, I think what we know is for some students, a different pathway is the pathway that makes the most sense for them. And then again, hopefully it's not because of affordability challenges alone, but certainly there's other pathways that work. So for some of our students, they're on a pathway where the community college experience represents a way of gaining a credential and ideally skills that allow them to go straight into work and to go straight into work into industries and fields of high labor market value for them in their first job, but also subsequent jobs, right? So there's sort of a pathway we see with our students where community college is a very specific opportunity that they're pursuing to get to a specific end. We have to be able to deliver for that there in a way that four-year institutions sometimes can, but not as efficiently or effectively for these students. There's another population of students where, for a variety of reasons, it just makes sense for them to attend community college first, complete some credits, identify a meta major, and then transfer to a four-year institution. Typically, for many of our students, they will transfer to a four-year institution that's within 50 miles of their home or their community college, right? There's a proximity and geographic impetus for a lot of our students. And so really understanding how we can support those students both to be successful in community college and also on their transfer pathways, I think will be important as they think about what choices they want to make. So I think community colleges open up access to a population of students that are typically first-time college-going students, typically students of color or students from low-income communities, that a four-year institution hasn't been able to open up, both because of affordability challenges and because of other various dynamics that don't always make those institutions accessible for our students.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely agree with everything you're saying. And I think, yeah, it'd be really interesting to see, if it sort of like moves the needle on sort of the, kind of crisis of affordability, kind of engage more students kind of in this part of the ecosystem. And then, as we wind down, like if you could briefly speak about this, because I think the one question I could imagine other people, is coming up for me that might sort of like wonder about this model. So just make sure, give it a little bit more focus is like on that transfer piece. Like I think you see some like research and studies around like that, I think being a major kind of barrier for a number of reasons. But I guess just speaking to that variable of like, cool, great, you had this person maybe even complete, flying colors and had an amazing experience for the 2 years of community college, but then like they could not kind of surmount that sort of mountain or chasm or, whatever metaphor you want to use from going from, their community college to a four-year institution. What are your thoughts on just sort of like, I guess that sort of conundrum and what I guess you all are trying to do to kind of alleviate that?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two angles to this, right? The first is transfer policies and practices when it comes to credits. So often you will see students who have completed coursework with very similar syllabi, but the four-year institution won't accept those credits. Our students can't afford to and won't waste their time, right? Trying to retake those courses. I actually heard a story recently where there was a course taught by the same faculty member at the community college and at the four-year institution with a very similar syllabus, and the credits didn't transfer. It was literally the same faculty member. And so we certainly have to tackle that as a society and system. I think there's some positive proof points you're starting to see here in Chicago and across the country of what that'll take. And then I think the second realm is sort of what we do, right? So I think what we have heard from our alums is the skills and the capabilities we equip them with to go on that journey alone after they're done with us formally in our program at community colleges, help to build their capacity to be successful later, right? So a big part of programs like ours tries to build the capacity, not just sort of give students what they need, but help build their capacity to be successful in the future. And then, we are also in very early stages of thinking about what it would look like for our model to be applied across a community college to four-year transfer context as well, right? So one of the cool things we've seen about our model is we help students go from high school into the community college system or be a returning adult from the community and into college. Our students are much more likely to actually enroll and get through that summer melt. We have a belief that we could think about supporting students both in community college across that summer where they intend to transfer to the four-year institution and also into the early part of their work at the four-year institution. So we want to test out to see if that can help with increasing transfer rates and transfers into majors with high labor market value that four-year institutions traditionally struggle to recruit students from, ultimately into a good job after the four-year institution as well. So we're going to be testing out some work there as well.
Yeah, it's great to hear that's kind of on your radar of like, doing your part to try to help solve this like just vexing problem that like ends up, like you're saying, being completely contingent on like one faculty member being like, I don't think so, like it's not going to approve it or whatever. And there's some pretentiousness, I think, around that sometimes. And other times it's like just a kind of inefficient process. And I know that there's some organizations that are like solely focusing on trying to address this. And I think, part of it's just like getting folks in the same room and trying to get some more like more formal agreements in place and stuff like that. But I think, like once that gets better, that is just such a huge like accelerant to, I think, like the work that you're doing on sort of the front end as some, student is sort of approaching that moment to where they don't have all this like hard work that they've done get kind of completely derailed or sort of like, sort of undermined, I guess. So, so that is all really good stuff. And we'll close out here just to wrap up, just advice that you would have for other higher ed leaders right now, like folks who are just kind of scratching their head trying to, address like affordability, access, student success, transfer, like, I don't know, like, a lot of stuff to sort of consider, to work on, to try to, figure out. But like, if you kind of had to try to inspire, kind of give like a call to action or sort of final thoughts here, just advice that you would give to other higher ed leaders right now.
I think that the headline I would give is like, continue to stay bold and ambitious and play the long game at the same time. One of the cool things I've observed coming from having done some work in the K-12 sector is I would say there are an equal number of challenges and opportunities there, and there will continue to be. But the leaders who I found really succeeding and thriving in that space were those who had bold, ambitious visions, didn't let the bar go down in the face of challenges, and then really understood what the long game looked like on this work. I'm the first person to, who's impatient, who's ferociously urgent about this work. And I've learned to sort of celebrate the progress and the milestones along the way, because some of this work is, systems change and institutional change will take some time. Mindset orientation shifts don't happen overnight. And so to stay persistent through it all and do what it takes to take care of yourselves to be able to stay and push through and persevere through, I think will be really important.
That's great advice, because I think that's been some of my frustrations, is that like the higher ed feels like it's kind of just like in certain institutions like that I'm like more connected with, I see it where it's just like feels like you're kind of just like playing whack-a-mole, and that is very very prone to being burnt out and getting frustrated. So it's like certainly you do need to kind of keep your eye on the present moment and address what's coming up and not feel or not kind of come across as being sort of aloof or sort of detached or whatever. But be thinking about how are you making sort of strategic investments and partnerships, and just really being mindful of surviving and thriving in this moment, because I think that's the other thing where like a lot of institutions just are like making all this cuts, and it's like, well, you can't cut your way to growth, so what else are you doing? Like that's great that you're maybe you get some underperforming programs or things that you just want to try to consolidate, whatever. I'm always like, and okay, well, like what else? It has to be more than that. Have that long-term sort of insight, ability to really look ahead to what's next, and keep abreast to what trend lines you want to be kind of following for your institution. So really do appreciate you hanging out, the amazing work that you and your team do, and for sharing all that you did. We'll have ways to connect with you and 1 million degrees in the description for the episode. But man, just really great talking to you. I'm glad we were able to get connected and able to do this, and just really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time, and I appreciate all the great speakers you bring on. It's been fun listening to your podcast.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.